Okay, for this last third video, we're going to look at a couple different issues continuing surrounding the mass media. In the last video, we talked about how media can serve to reproduce the dominant ideology in society. Fun fact, there are actually social media groups trying to target leftist professors who are sending their lectures out online. Weird stuff these days. All right, so this video we're going to look at a couple things. We're going to look at who owns and controls the media and the problem of gatekeeping. We'll look at how media shapes the social construction of our reality and the underlying issue of the digital divide. So what is gatekeeping? Since the 1980s, and really since the beginning of mass media, over time it's not uncommon for companies to buy each other out, to outcompete one another. And this leads to consolidation of control of what we see. 6 major companies, for example, control most of what we read and see on TV, as opposed to 1980s and 1990s when there's over 50 companies producing that content. So GE, News Corp, Viacom, Time Warner, AOL. These are the means of producing the big shows we see every day. These companies control what shows get produced and what don't. Again, this comes back to that fundamental Marxist question of who owns the means of production. If I wanted to make a show starring a black superhero 5 years ago, for example, it might have been very difficult to do that because maybe these companies don't think it's going to sell. What we see, even in terms of mainstream news, is often determined by these agencies. I mentioned last time that Marxist economists often won't show up on mainstream news shows. This is part of the reason for that. Even though their ideas are considered relevant in academia, it's not considered publishable by these major corporations. Let's look at content producers too. Race and gender and diversity in general are huge issues at some of these major television networks. Netflix, Amazon, CBS, CW, 90% of the shows have no black writers, or just one. 100% of shows on Hulu, Showtime, AMC, and TBS have no black writers. What does this mean? Well, let's think about it. I come from a very particular perspective in society. Some issues affect me that do not affect many of my students at an HBCU. And many issues that affect them I don't see. We've talked about this in terms of the concept of privilege. Well, if those experiences aren't being put into the writing of a show or of a movie, then no one's going to think to film them, to make something about them. So when we see narratives around predominantly white issues and white concerns, this is where the issue can come from, in part, is that the creators of content are predominantly white people, and particularly white men. Showrunners are an interesting example. Showrunners make most of the creative decisions in a television show. Even though different episodes have different directors, showrunners make the overall, they're kind of like a director in a movie. They decide kind of what gets cut, what gets in. And we notice that almost all showrunners in Hollywood are white. Different networks have different capacities to diversify, and many are making an effort to do so. But this diversity is really problematic. Say someone wanted to make a show, I don't know, something similar to like Get Out. Look at a film like Get Out or Moonlight or Black Panther. These are shows in which white characters are not central. Some of these, there are no white characters. In Moonlight, there's almost tangentially one white person in the movie, and it's a cop. So, think of the norm of what we see every day. This is very important for our conceptions of reality, and most of those conceptions are shaped by white folks. There are people who are making efforts to change this. Jordan Peele's company. He is the creator of Get Out, but he's also done the new Twilight Zone. He's doing the upcoming Candyman he's producing. He hired a young black woman to direct it. And this is going to mean that what's in the movie, the tone of the movie, all of this is going to reflect a more black experience of the world. This is going to shape the social construction of reality. What does this concept mean? Well, what we see in front of us often shapes what we believe about our everyday reality, what is and is not true of the world. So, for example, this young white guy, one clip of him went viral confronting an elder Native American person, and everyone said, oh, this is just a typical case of these white privileged kids. And pretty, look at that smarmy look on his face. You do kind of want to slap him. But if you watch the broader context, the broader video, he was actually approached by the elder Native American person. And while we don't want to take either side in it, which version we see controls what we think really happened. This is why social media is so important, because what we see on our social media often shapes what we think is real or not. There is such a thing as a black Twitter, for example, which most white people don't see. And it focuses mostly on black issues. Many Trump supporters looked at this picture in the upper right corner and took it as reality. It's of course photoshopped, and it shows Trump supposedly helping a man trapped during a flood. Most of us know he probably wouldn't go anywhere near a natural disaster. But for these people, if they see it, they believe it because they saw the picture. And if you tell them it isn't real, they increasingly tell you that you're just denying the truth. So social media today plays a really important role in creating the reality of our world around us. Today, perhaps, the major mass media control is getting democratized. YouTubers can upload anything. Look at the stuff I'm uploading. It's easy to do and it's free. So is there a democratization of the means of production? Is this a good thing? This is probably going to be our discussion topic this week on the discussion board. One last issue we need to consider is the digital divide. This is affecting many of you who are using electronics and the internet to learn. Not everybody has internet access. So broadband access in particular is not available. So the digital divide means the divide between those who have technology and have access to high-speed internet, computers, and those who don't. Many houses don't have computers in them. People rely on their phones now. Computers are expensive. We note here that poorer folks and older folks and less educated folks are less likely to be on the internet. And we'd also note that there's a lack of rural access that is in the country. It's hard to get good high-speed internet. So while you might be fine at home streaming your movies, you can't do that in many parts of the country, and indeed in many parts of the world. So while we might take the internet and all of its tools as for granted today, in many parts of the world we don't have that connectivity. When we ask why other people fall behind, it's important to remember that there's some basic infrastructure, there's some basic stuff we need to catch up.